Our political commentators are joining us now. Dave Jacobson, Democratic strategist, and John Thomas, a Republican consultant. Okay, here's a part of Jake Tapper's reporting on what's sort of going on here behind the scenes. CNN has learned the president's aggressive move is part of a new strategy pushed by a loose and informal group of advisors outside the White House, part of a push to paint the president as a victim of a deep state conspiracy. The campaign is about convincing Trump-friendly media and the president himself to take a more adversarial position towards Rosenstein and the FBI. But, you know, as the president has said over and over and over again, he has done nothing wrong, nothing to see here.
There has been no collusion, no collusion. They all say there's no collusion, and there is no collusion. I can only say this, there was absolutely no collusion. There's no collusion. There was no collusion with Russia other than by the Democrats. But there has been no collusion. They won't find any collusion. It doesn't exist.
So, Dave, again, if the president has done nothing wrong, if there's no collusion, then why does he need to undermine the credibility and go on the attack against, Rosenstein and everybody else?
Well, it looks as though he's hiding something, right? And I think this scorched earth approach that he and his outside advisors are executing on, I think is an attempt to not only undermine the Russia probe, but to change public opinion. Right now, CNN put out a poll just a couple weeks ago. 70% of Americans believe that Donald Trump should meet with Bob Mueller and answer the tough questions. 84% of Americans want Bob Mueller to put forward a comprehensive report with all the facts on the investigation. He's trying to change public opinion by coming out with this sort of scorched earth, bare knuckle tactic strategy to undermine the Russia probe so that people think that it's not credible.
But the issue is not whether Trump did something wrong or whether Trump colluded. The issue is he's saying whether or not the campaign was spied upon illegally. And this is something you'll remember Trump was bellyaching about, what, a year ago? That he had a source.
Yeah, and it proved to be wrong then.
Well, we'll see, because in fact there was an informant or somebody who was spying on the campaign and then reporting information back to the government. Now the question is, did somebody authorize that in the government? We don't know all the facts. And so that's what the Deputy Attorney General is trying to get to the bottom of.
Here's part of an op-ed in the Washington Post, and it's by a former FBI agent, who is a commentator for CNN as well, because already this push by the White House has outed one FBI source. Relying on a covert source rather than a more intrusive method of gathering information suggests that the FBI may have been acting cautiously, perhaps too cautiously, to protect the campaign, not undermine it. Ironically, the FBI's apparent attempt to protect the campaign by investigating Russia's efforts quietly is now being weaponized against it. So, Dave, all the reporting we have from everything which is out there, it seems that, at worst, this is regular practice by the FBI to send an informant out there to gather information, and they try to do it on the quiet because of all of the fallout from what happened with Hillary Clinton.
Well, it's a double standard, right? Like, Donald Trump is saying that the FBI was corrupted because they were, quote, spying on his campaign, which, by the way, it was like 3 meetings that there was no, like, in bed inside the campaign, watching Donald Trump and his advisors make decisions. On the flip side, you have the FBI, skewering Hillary Clinton throughout the course of the presidential campaign, once during Comey, the former FBI director, his original press conference, and then secondly, putting out that notice just days before the election, undermining Hillary Clinton's campaign, potentially leading to her losing the election. None of that happened through the Trump campaign, even though now we know that the FBI knew about the Russian meddling in the election and their favoritism toward Donald Trump months before the election.
John, the old saying goes, if the facts are against you, argue the law. If the law is against you, argue the facts. If the facts and the law are against you, pound the table and yell like hell. This kind of sounds like that.
I can see how you would think that, but there's also the impression that, hey, if there was an abuse of government authority to embed a spy, without a proper process in place.
Saying it's a spy?
There's somebody inside the campaign
who's
asking questions and then reporting back to the government and going back in. I mean, I think
that's spy is a loaded term. You could say it was an informant. It was, someone.
However that whistleblower informant came to be, he was an asset of the U.S. government. And how did what was the process? What were the checks and balances in place to make sure that it wasn't an Obama Justice Department looking just to snoop in on the Trump campaign?
I mean, just even the language, the Obama Justice Department. It's not
Okay,
the Obama Justice Department.
the Justice Department.
Because up until this president, and since Nixon up until this president, the Department of Justice was independent, and there was a firewall between the two. And there are concerns, Dave, that basically by getting the Department of Justice to direct the Inspector General to look into this, that firewall is breaking down big time.
Well, Comey was concerned about that same firewall on a tarmac meeting with Loretta
and that
Lynch
was wrong then.
Right.
And this is wrong now.
Right. Donald Trump came off looking like a dictator today, dictating to his Justice Department and to his top law enforcement agency in the country to do his bidding.
I don't see what the
do his political
I don't see
bidding.
what the harm is in getting to the bottom. If there was no misdoings, then what's the problem?
Here's the difference. If they came up with that independent of the president dictating to them or directing them to do it, that's one thing. Having the president inject himself into the DOJ or the FBI is totally unprecedented and hasn't happened before.
And then there's also this. Never miss an opportunity for some fundraising. The Trump campaign sent out an email, worse than Watergate. Goes on, this could be the greatest political scandal in American history. I need you to sign your name right this second to join me in demanding this abuse of power gets investigated. Once it's filled out, then directs over to a fundraising page. But you know, and John, the language here, I could be overthinking it, but it's like turning the language and the words which are often used to describe this president against the people who are investigating him. You know, worse than Watergate. That's what so many people have said about this administration. Abuse of power, again, what so many people have said about this administration. It seems very calculated.
It sounds like smart political speech to me. I think both sides would do it if the cards were turned. So, and they truly do feel that there was an abuse of power in this process. So I think it's fair for them to use the language, and both sides have fundraising emails at the ready to say that they're using this as a moment. They use any point in the news cycle as a moment to raise money.
Dave, I missed the fundraising email from the Clinton-Lewinsky investigation.
Right.
Well, there was an email back then, but
they didn't have
the fundraiser. Anyway.
They had beepers in.
Yeah. I mean, did they raise money off the Lewinsky scandal?
No.
Back in the day?
No. I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't think so.
Well, they
can't
did.
remember
In
any
fact,
news stories.
that's how they won critical House seats called direct mail.
Right. But
Yeah, but not in the same way. But look, both parties like ring the fire alarm almost every single day. I get a barrage of fundraising emails from Democrats and Republicans because I'm on all these lists. And so, look, sure, it's a politically advantageous opportunity for the Trump campaign to try to capitalize on this. I just think it's unethical. Right? That's the difference.
Yeah. Okay. We'll stay with this because President Trump is set to meet with the South Korean President Moon Jae-in on Tuesday. All of this coming as there are growing doubts that the U.S.-North Korea summit will actually take place next month. Ivan Watson, live in Seoul. Ivan, amid all of these doubts about whether or not Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump will actually sit down and have this summit, the Vice President, Mike Pence, is adding to those doubts by repeating a threat the president made last week.
You know, there was some talk about the Libyan model last week. And, you know, as the president made clear, you know, this will only end like the Libyan model ended if Kim Jong-un doesn't make a deal.
Some people saw that as a threat.
Well, I think it's more of a fact.
So quite a statement there from the Vice President. We know that North Koreans are very concerned about what happened in Libya. So how are they likely to react to this?
Well, it just shows that whatever kind of warming of relations and the kind of kinder statements that were coming from the Trump administration, coming from Pyongyang, that we seem to have hit some rough waters in what had been a kind of charm offensive from both sides, John, where, you know, just a week or so ago, President Trump was welcoming home 3 U.S. citizens who'd been released by North Korea and had kind words for Kim Jong-un. And now we have thinly veiled threats being issued. This coming after North Korea started harshly criticizing the U.S. and South Korea for conducting joint air defense drills known as Max Thunder. Their annual drills, North Korea says it could be preparation for a possible invasion. North Korea has been kind of beating up South Korea in recent days, first inviting South Korean journalists to North Korea for a ceremony, and now rescinding, evidently, that invitation. So the diplomatic warming that we'd seen in recent months, again, it's hitting a rough patch, and it's raising questions about the expected summit in Singapore next month, where you're going to have, or we were going to have, the first ever meeting between a U.S. president and a North Korean leader. John.
Okay, Ivan, thank you. Ivan Watson live for us there in Seoul. Appreciate that. Back to Dave and John. Further to what we're hearing from Mike Pence about, the making all these threats. There's also this reporting, it was in the New York Times and CNN has confirmed it, that there's now great concern by Donald Trump that this whole summit with Kim Jong-un could end in basically a huge embarrassment, that there is no deal. But, John, this is everything that the president was told when he grabbed onto that offer of a meeting with Kim Jong-un all those weeks ago, that, this is not what presidents do because, they could end badly. And it's now taken this long for the president to realize that?
I don't think that he's just, I think it's obviously a concern of his, but it's not like he's waking up for the first time realizing this. But look, with great reward can come great risk as well. And the fact that I think what we're seeing here is North Korea is just being Trump to Trump. This is part of an ongoing negotiation. And yeah, it's high stakes, there's no question about it. But I think this is just the first of many steps in a negotiation of before they even ever sit down to have some table stakes.
Dave, to paraphrase the former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, you go into high-stakes nuclear negotiations with the president you have, not the president you want.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, you have two irrational actors, both of which are temperamentally unfit to be in office, both of which act like dictators. And here's the calculus for Donald Trump, right? You're right. There's a big potential reward. And I think that on a bipartisan level, like, all Americans should want peace on the Korean Peninsula,
It's
right?
a good thing to have.
It is a good thing to
Absolutely.
have. The challenge is there's a way to go about it, right? And you have your Secretary of State and you have your high-level State Department officials negotiate a concrete, coherent plan before you go into the meeting, right? So you're just sealing that deal. You're just shaking hands and doing a photo op at the end of the day. And the challenge is there were no preconditions. There is no parameters that are like that the U.S. is outlining that North Korea has agreed to, and that is the challenge. So either A, if the meeting doesn't happen, it's an embarrassment for Donald Trump, or B, if the meeting does happen but we don't have peace at the end of the day, that's also equally an embarrassment.
And also a lot more dangerous than the situation was, I guess, before. I want to finish very quickly because we're almost out of time. But we now have Trump Tower meeting, the sequel. New York Times reported that there wasn't just that one meeting in June 2016 with every Russian in New York who happened to be there in the summer. In August, the following August, there was a meeting with Don Jr. and representatives from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. No one really knows what the hell this means, apart from the fact that Eric Prince, the former head of Blackwater, basically perjured himself in front of Congress. But Dave, what's the significance of this from your point of view, and then Dave, John, after that?
I just think it's striking that for the first time in modern presidential politics, you have a political campaign that seeks outside influence from other countries, outside of America. I mean, first of all, if you want to get opposition researchers, we have the most talented political consultants in the world.
Two of them right here.
Right, two of them are right here, right? I think we can all agree on that, right, Sean? But like, so why are they like reaching out to other countries, whether they're adversaries like Russia or allies like Saudi Arabia? Like, they're equal. Like, they're both foreign entities that shouldn't be injecting themselves in a presidential race, in a domestic campaign.
Hired Christopher Steele, was, is not an American, right?
He was a subcontractor.
So okay,
He'd already been contracted by another organization. They just picked up.
No, but my point is not an American. So there's talent outside of America, right?
But not good talent, obviously.
Clearly not good talent. But look, just because somebody had a meeting, I mean, I get pitched on a daily basis about the latest whiz-bang technology, and oftentimes it comes from other countries. I typically try to avoid those meetings because they're usually a waste of our time. I think what you saw there is amateur hour, quite frankly, where Don Jr. was taking meetings he shouldn't have taken. They appear inappropriate at best, but they're probably just a waste of his time.
Yeah, and the other, I guess, if your theory is true, then everything else that goes along with it just adds to what looks like a very suspicious picture. But I guess this is what Mueller is going to find out.
Yeah, he'll sort it out.
Unless he gets fired.
Let's hope not.
David, John, thank you.
Thanks.